Hey guys, as part of my year of rereading for 2021, I'm going to be talking about The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. In The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, biographer Margaret Leah is summoned by the popular but enigmatic author Vida Winter to tell her life story. Vida Winter is old and dying, and she wants to finally tell her story. A story that has been a mystery to her readers for decades. A story about twins, a ghost, an ancestral home, and a devastating fire. As I mentioned at the top of this video, The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield is part of my year of rereading project for this year of 2021, and I just freaking love this book so much. Yeah, guys, it is definitely just one of my top favorites. This is definitely the type of book for people who are readers. If you love to read, if you love all things literature, if you love classic literature, I mean, just reading in general, this, I think, is definitely the book for you. It's a book about storytelling. It's a book about the power of words and language and whatnot. There's quite a number of things going on in this book. A lot of really great deep themes, I think. The book is very heavily focused on families, the families that you are born into, but then the families that you can make outside of that are not even blood related. And another big element of this book is it's constantly exploring this whole thing of what is truth and what is fiction. What is it that makes a good story? What is it that makes a compelling story? How much truth do we want in a story? How much, I don't want to say lies, like especially like when you have like an unreliable narrator, for instance, something like that. How much truth do you, like absolute 100% truth, do you want in a novel versus how much kind of maybe some subtle white lies thrown in there, you know, just to make it kind of interesting. And it's the same with our everyday lives, us as real human beings. It's the same with our everyday lives, because every day we are constantly telling some sort of story to somebody, you know, a co-worker or a friend or a neighbor, a family member, you know, you're always telling some sort of story that happens in your day, or maybe days previously, or weeks previously, months previously, years previously. You're always telling some sort of story. And the thing about stories is that sometimes we embellish. You know, sometimes we embellish. We a lot of times repeat an event how we saw it technically, even though others may have kind of seen it differently. And sometimes when we repeat our stories, we embellish our stories a little bit, sometimes with the intent of either making yourself look better or making somebody else look worse, you know. This novel also plays with the idea of the Gothic novel tropes. It's definitely heavily inspired by things within the Gothic genre, and there's numerous references to things like Jane Eyre and The Woman in White and Wuthering Heights, you know, any type of book in that Gothic genre category. But yeah, I think the biggest influence in this book is definitely Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And the further and the deeper you get into this book, the more of those Jane Eyre nuances you definitely pick up on and see. And I think keeping that in mind, it actually kind of helps you get through this book, and sometimes maybe the little twists and turns that happen in this book, because you've maybe read something like Jane Eyre, you're probably thinking, okay, wait, I think I see what's coming here. And this book is just so, just so utterly captivating, you guys. It's absolutely compelling. It's very atmospheric, and it's very descriptive. Now, that could be a bad thing for some readers, because I was definitely looking through some reviews on Goodreads, and there were definitely the handful of readers who were like, oh, this book is just way too descriptive for me. It's too flowery, it's too flourishy, it's just too much. Some people even kind of find this book to be a little too pretentious. I guess it's all up to you. But I love this book. Just the writing is absolutely gorgeous and descriptive, and as I said, it's very atmospheric, and you really feel drawn into this world, and into this world of this ancestral home that you're primarily kind of within in this entire book. You feel very immersed, I think. And the thing about this book as well, it feels timeless. You're never given any sort of proper feel like, okay, where in time are we? Because there are 2 points of view going on here. There's like a present day and a flashback sequence and whatnot. And the thing is, you never quite know, well, what is the present day? Is the present day now, or is it maybe a couple decades ago? And then in turn, when you do get the flashback sequences, where do those take place, you know? So you're never really given a great sense of time in this novel, where in time you're kind of located, which is kind of nice. And it gives it that timeless feel, and it lends this book that I don't think it'd ever feel dated. You know, it'll never feel dated because there's really no hint or tease about where in time you are exactly. So it definitely gives this book a timeless feel that even decades and decades, centuries from now, if anyone was to pick up this book, you know, it would easily kind of just fit into someone's current time, I guess, if that makes sense. And another big thing that I think this novel heavily deals with is this whole idea of trauma. Every damn character in this book has some sort of trauma, and it's not just like an outward trauma. In some ways, a lot of the trauma going on, it's characters having some sort of inner trauma that they're dealing with more than anything. So yeah, our main character, Margaret Leah, she is a biographer. She has been summoned by this very popular but very reclusive author named Vida Winter. Vida Winter is essentially like, I was going to say someone like J.K. Rowling, you know, J.K. Rowling, who's very, very popular, but J.K. Rowling has still only been around for a couple decades when you think about it. So I think in the context of Vida Winter, because she's very old and she's been writing for decade upon decade upon decade, I think it's easier to compare Vida Winter to somebody like Stephen King, if that makes sense. Because Stephen King has been around for a very, very long time. Most people know his name. Most people have read a book from him, or have seen a movie adaptation, or a TV series adaptation, or even if you've never read his books or seen any of his movies or TV adaptations, the thing is, most people know him by name, at least, you know. So that's kind of the character of Vida Winter in here, her popularity. So yeah, Margaret is coming. She is summoned by Vida Winter. Vida Winter, who is now old, she is dying. She wants Margaret to tell her life story and whatnot. So Margaret, in the meantime, as I mentioned, a big theme of this book is trauma. Margaret's big trauma is that she was actually born a twin, but her twin died very shortly after birth and whatnot. So, but the thing is, Margaret found out that she was a twin like way after the fact, like years after the fact. Like, she kind of stumbled across some stuff that her parents had hidden, and she found out that she was a twin. So Margaret's big trauma in this book is her sense of feeling very detached, her sense of feeling very incomplete, that she should have a twin following her around everywhere, you know. There's something that feels wrong with her life that she's just not quite sure how to cope with. It's a very odd trauma. I mean, because I don't have a twin sister, you know. I don't know what it's like to have a twin, so it is kind of a thing like, well, how... I can't understand that, and I can't relate to it, you know, kind of that feeling of detachment from someone you were, I guess, born the same day with, you know. And then, yeah, going back to Vida Winter, like I said, Vida Winter is a very enigmatic, reclusive author, and that's kind of the big thing of this novel. Why exactly is she so reclusive? What is she hiding? And the big thing that you find out about Vida Winter early on, that Margaret kind of shares with us, is that Vida Winter has always fabricated her life and her stories, that there's not a single ounce of truth to any of the stories that she has told over her many decades of being interviewed by reporters and whatnot. So that's a big part of this novel, trying to figure out why Vida Winter is the way that she is. And because Vida Winter is now old and dying, she feels the need to lift all of these heavy burdens off of her shoulder. Like, she feels the need that she can finally release some of these burdens that she's been keeping, and she wants to tell her life story. And she feels like she can trust Margaret to tell this story because Margaret has written other biographies in the past, and she seems to have a good understanding of like sibling relationships and sibling dynamics, and that's a big part of this story. Once again, going back to the other big theme of this book, having to deal with families, and yet Vida Winter telling this story of her family essentially, and there's a story there dealing with twins and whatnot, which once again connecting with Margaret, who is a twin herself. So yeah, once Vida Winter starts heading into her story, Margaret is instantly just hooked from the get-go with Vida Winter's story, because it's a story of twins, it's a story of an ancestral home, a story of a governess, a story of a ghost. And when I say a ghost, I don't mean that in the traditional sense of a ghost. That's actually kind of one of the big joys of this novel, is kind of the ghost story element, because it's definitely not going to be what you're expecting when you hear me say a ghost story. It's definitely kind of not what you're expecting. And yeah, all of these events, all of these various threads, they all culminate into a big, devastating fire at Vida Winter's ancestral home. So you know that. You already know from the get-go there's been some sort of fire. It's not a big mystery. The novel lets you know up front that there has been a fire that has happened in the past. So this whole novel is building to how does it catch on fire? And all of this, all of these elements, all of this is, there is Vida Winter's hidden traumas somewhere buried in there that Margaret has to kind of get through. As I said, this book is told in alternating timelines. There is the present day timeline where we have Margaret, interviewing Vida Winter, and Vida Winter telling her story and whatnot. There's all of that in the present. And then another large bulk of the book is also done through flashback sequences, where we do go back to the ancestral home and we see Vida Winter's life and whatnot, and all the crazy inhabitants of that world and whatnot. And though I do love the chapters with Margaret and her sequences where she's talking with Vida Winter, though I love all that, my favorite parts of this book are definitely the flashback sequences, because I think that's where you definitely get all the really good, juicy Gothic elements and stories and tropes and whatnot. That's where you get a lot of that classic Jane Eyre feel. And every character in this book is just so unique, and I think very well fleshed out. There's just all sorts of strange and peculiar characters in this book. They're just all very odd, but like oddly likable as well. It's like you don't ever particularly dislike anybody or hate somebody enough, I think every character, you feel some sort of degree of sympathy for them. And this may sound strange as well, there's not a villain in this book. Like, I wouldn't say there's a traditional villain at all in this book. Because most books have to have heroes and villains, but this is the type of book that it's not relying on some sort of villain or outside force or anything, really. The book is very internal, if that makes sense, and really it's the characters themselves that are their own worst enemies, rather than kind of all these other things getting in the way, so it's a very strange book, because I think you're kind of expecting there to be some sort of villain, but there's not. So yeah, overall, I am really glad I finally got to reread this book, because just like just about every book that I've been rereading this year, it's been a decade. You guys, it's been a decade since I last got to re-experience this book, and I used to read it quite often. It was so fun to re-experience this book, and since it has been such a long time since I read it, I couldn't quite remember all of the little details and all the little nuances. It's like I had a kind of running frame in my head about what was going on and what some of the twists and turns were, but I couldn't remember every little thread and connection. So it was really fun to re-experience this book and read it almost as if it was my first time reading it again, because there were a couple moments in here that I was like, oh wow, I forgot about that, And this is the type of book that definitely benefits from multiple reads, because even as many times as I have read this book, I feel like it's the type of book that you're always going to pick up on something maybe new or different, or even see something new or different that you didn't notice before. It definitely benefits from multiple reads, I think. You'll always get something new So yeah, I definitely recommend this book. As I said, if you are a lover of reading, a lover of literature, a lover of classic literature, the Gothic horror genre, this is definitely the book for you. As I mentioned as well, it's not for everybody. There's plenty of reviews on Goodreads, people finding it too descriptive, too flowery, too flourishy, too pretentious. I guess it's kind of just up to you how you feel in your personal preferences. But yeah, I adore this book, and it was just a great time to reread it again. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on my reread of The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. In the comments below, have you guys read this book? Do you plan on reading it? And if you have read it, do you love it? Do you hate it? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.